What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today we're doing the hurry up offense just by myself. Sorry in advance, JT Mason, those guys have busy schedules, and you know what, had to let them live their lives for a week, so you're stuck with just me this upcoming week. But we're going to go through each and every game just because you're only hearing from me, so a little bit more time to talk about each and every game. So I'm going to give you my run through each and every matchup this week in the NFL Week 8 slate, and I'm going to give you my picks against the spread, and I'll also make a point of differentiation, games that I think a team can win, but I like the other side to cover. Things like that, but hopefully you all enjoy. If you do, hit that like button. If you're new around here, hit that big red subscribe button, and let me hear your picks down below in the comment section. Without further ado, let's jump into it. We start with Thursday Night Football, Ravens and Bucks. I'm gonna take Baltimore, even though they're having to lay 2 points on the road. This feels like a spot where it's like, man, Tom Brady getting points at home, like that feels kind of wild. Something I didn't envision saying, 3-4 months ago, but you just look at where this Bucks team is right now, and I mean, coming off a very embarrassing loss to Carolina, which makes sense for a logical rebound spot. But I'd also argue the Ravens, despite winning, last week, they're still not playing great football. Namely Lamar, he can be a little streaky and a little turnover prone when he hits the wrong side of variance or the downsides or the wrong streaks. And then you look at, again, that Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay offense. I mean, they get across 50 and they fall apart. Like, I don't know what it is, but I just don't know if I have enough faith in the Tampa Bay offense right now. And even that defense, right? I mean, like, PJ Walker was dropping dimes against the Bucs. I mean, PJ Walker and Chuba Hubbard and Carolina offense also down Robbie Anderson made the Bucs defense look kind of pathetic at times throughout that game. I mean, it's 21-3, so it's relatively low scoring, but yeah, I just think I feel a little bit more confident about the Ravens defense right now. They felt like they made some progress with each of the last couple of weeks, and I think they can scheme up some pressure, especially against the middle. Calais Campbell's coming off a really nice game, and if they can cause some havoc up the middle against that interior offensive line, that's obviously been a work in progress for Tampa Bay. I mean, that's going to make Brady uncomfortable, and I think that might be enough to kind of slow down that offense that's just already been kind of slow. So I don't know how much you really need to slow it down, but keep the Bucs kind of on the ropes when it comes to their offensive production. And then, enough big plays from Lamar, I think you can win kind of an ugly game between two teams still trying to figure it out. So then we get to Broncos and Jags. Especially north of the 3-point mark. This is, using our picks league. Actually, if you want to join our picks league, be sure to check out the link down below in the description. But this is, in front of the 3-point hook. I'll take the Jags there, but these are two teams that, depending on what point of the season we're talking about, have disappointed a lot of people. Obviously preseason connotations, the Broncos are not the same team we kind of thought they would be. It should be Russell Wilson coming back. But then you look at, Jacksonville, all the hype they had after, week 3 or so, kind of going into that Eagles matchup, they're not the same team. And obviously they haven't won since. So I think this is kind of a, opportunity for the Jags to improve. I don't think their record showcases how good they are. Where, as much respect I have for that Broncos defense, that offense is just an absolute mess right now. So this could be, kind of the breakout, showing maybe, and the Broncos offense kind of takes that next step forward. But, I just think the Jags, Trevor Lawrence at home, I'm going to roll with them. It's going to be tough for them to move the ball, especially especially without a clear-cut number one wide receiver. So it feels like Pat Surtain's going to cut down half the field in this one. But, ETN's been showcasing some nice juice of late. And, again, I just think in a battle between, 2-5 teams, I think the Jags have been a little bit more impressive so far this season. But, also they're playing in London, which, this is kind of weird. I don't know if I really want to take this into account, but Jags are really good at playing in London. So we'll give them the nudge there because of that. Then we get to Falcons, Panthers. Man, I don't want to touch this game with a 10-foot pole. I guess I got to make a pick in this league, so I guess I have to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I'll go with Atlanta. Man, the Falcons are way more fun to bet on or to root for when they're an underdog, because then it's like, hey, they're kind of a scrappy. They have a high-octane offense at times. They have some playmakers on defense. We'll have to check the injury report, see, what's the status update on Terrell and Hayward before we get into this game, and I might change this pick before Sunday. But if those DBs can play, then I feel that much better about it. But God, the Falcons are so much more fun when they're getting points versus when I'm having to lay 4.5 here with them. But last week was great and all for Carolina, but I think that is absolute outlier. There's just no other way to put it. That is an absolute statistical outlier of what we saw last week. So I don't envision them beating Tampa Bay the next time they see them, and I don't even know if they're better than Atlanta right now, So the PJ Walker versus Marcus Mariota, I'd love to see Desmond Ridder in this game. Either way, I think the Falcons probably the better quarterback, despite PJ kind of going crazy, dropping some bombs last week. Also, the offensive firepower, right? Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Cordell Patterson, more to work with there in Atlanta. Plus, they're playing at home versus, DJ Moore and, not a whole lot else. Chuba Hubbard's okay, but, not on that same tier of my excitement about London and Pitts and crew. So I'll take the Falcons. Say they have enough offensive firepower to get it done. So then we get to Bears and Cowboys. This is another fun one. 10.5 is a ton. But, the Bears with like last week, I feel like now it's going to course correct. I don't think last week what we saw on Monday Night Football from Chicago was the Bears turning a corner, right? And also, we'll see, this is obviously a couple days before the trade deadline. As Robert Quinn on the move, obviously he's going against his former team too here in Dallas. Man, I think Dak looks better this week, and I think that defense is so good. I think the Dallas defense might be enough to have the Cowboys be able to cover this 10-point mark just because they shut down Chicago. Again, I don't think last week was really something that is the true Bears of the future. Also, just Micah Parsons against anybody in that Chicago offensive line's a mismatch. It'll be interesting to see how Chicago uses Justin Fields' legs because he had a ton of running lanes and he extended a ton of plays against New England. What's that spy option for Dallas? That's something we haven't really gotten to see yet, so that's a question I want to see answered. But also, Trevon Diggs versus Darnell Mooney. I think Diggs has been stellar this year. Give him the advantage there. And then it's who else is going to move the chains for Chicago? If you take away Darnell Mooney, and if they have an option to slow down Justin Fields as a runner, I feel like that Bears offense is going to go back to kind of what we've become accustomed to. Nice win on the road last week against New England, but I think Dallas is a team that's kind of already got an elite defense. And, as Dak Prescott gets better and better, and, back in the rhythm of things, I think this team just gets that much better. Who knows? They might have another wide receiver probably not playing, because the deadline again is Tuesday, November 1st. So we don't know if there's going to be a move made, but there may well be. And then maybe that person sees a couple snaps. So that'd be exciting from a Cowboys perspective. Then we get to Lions and Dolphins. And I'm sorry, but 3.5 points. I'm kind of surprised it's just that, right? I know it wasn't pretty for Miami, but that first drive, Dolphins Steelers Sunday Night Football was, kind of that's what Miami is capable of doing, right? And I also look at a Lions run defense that has been putrid this year. So Shanahan run scheme versus a putrid run defense. Seems like a long day, and this is going to be probably one of my locks of the week. I'll actually give you my locks of the week just because we normally do that here on the Hurry Up Offense. So I'll go ahead and give you some of my favorite plays for this week, and actually coincides with the next game we're going to talk about. But this Miami minus 3.5 is probably going to be one of the plays I make as well. Furthermore, to his ideally only going to be better, right? He had 4 passes that likely should have been picked off by Steelers DBs last week. Ideally, decision making and ball placement's a little better this week. And it's also a Detroit team that, healthy scratch of Amani Oruwariye last week, despite having 6 picks last year. So what are they doing with that, cornerback situation? That could be interesting. And also last week, they did a ton with Jeff Okudah getting safety coverage against, CeeDee Lamb and try to take away that number 1 option. If you do that against Miami, it's okay, sure, you might slow down Tyreek Hill. Well, on the other side is Jalen Waddle. So, that style of defense, I think, could be thwarted by how explosive this Miami team is. And again, the run game, I think, alone might be enough to give the Dolphins the ability to cover this spread, despite being on the road. So, also, in a dome. So, when it comes to home field advantage, that's not really one that is one that massively aids Detroit. And, Miami's offense has been good. Now you put them in, stable climate. That's kind of scary. Then we get to the Vikings Cardinals. I'm going to take the Vikings to go ahead and cover. Minnesota plays close games, and last year this was a 3-point game that Minnesota should have tied up at the end of regulation, missed the kick. So ultimately it's a 3-point Cardinals win, but nonetheless, I think 2 teams heading in different directions, right? You're coming off the bye week if you're Minnesota, and you're already 5-1 squad with time to prep, playing at home against an Arizona secondary that, I'm not really crazy about. I think Justin Jefferson could be in for a huge day. I think DeAndre Hopkins, I think this is a game where you could lay over reception prompts for Justin Jefferson and DeAndre Hopkins and come out in a winner. D-Hop, that 5.5 catch prop last Thursday was one of my favorite plays and was a printing press. It just made money. It was a logical play, especially with, Robbie Anderson be the next biggest name in that wide receiver room, fresh off a trade. He's not going to get that many looks. He only got 1 target. Anyways, then, you talk about Arizona and it's man, they just kind of feel disheveled right now. Yes, Robbie Anderson is be further ingrained in the fold, and another week back for DeAndre Hopkins. Cool, all that sounds great. The play calling, this team struggles to score early in games. I think last week was the first time they had covered a first half spread all year long, and it took 2 consecutive Andy Dalton pick sixes to get that done. So this is one of those teams where, like, despite the names on paper being good, especially on the offensive side, I think there's enough organizational, I don't know, discombobulation that doesn't let the plane get off the air. And that's kind of just where I feel Arizona's at right now. Now, this could be the week where they kind of turn it around. But speaking of one of my locks of the week, this is one of my favorite plays. This, and then there's one more of a similar type. Vikings -1 in the first half. It's plus 105. It's actually plus odds. The Cardinals have not scored an opening drive yet this year. They have looked so discombobulated in the first half. And then Kirk, Cousins, Justin Jefferson, I feel confident that they can come away with some sort of offensive production. So, maybe you go money line, that's going to be minus odds. So that way, you're not going to have to push if they're up by a point, but it'd be kind of weird if that's, the circumstance. 7-6, I guess, would be the most logical way that happens. But I feel really good about playing that. And again, at plus odds too. So I'm feeling good. And plus Kevin O'Connell's a, great play caller. I love what he's done with the offense in a lot of ways so far this season. He's been really good at making adjustments. He was a little slow to start in that Miami game, but, kind of figured things out. So maybe that happens here and that kind of costs that bet. But throughout a majority of the season, they've been able to get points on the board early, and then things have gotten kind of interesting late. So I'm going to roll with that trend continuing. The Cardinals struggle early. Vikings have a lot of early success. I like the Vikings -1 in the first quarter. Again, we'll come back to a similar bet later on. Then we get to Saints Raiders. Yeah, I think I got to go Raiders right now. This is a tough one because they're two teams that are really disappointing me. I thought the Raiders would miss the playoffs, but I had them at 10-7 in my regular season predictions, and I saw the Saints as a playoff team. So this is another one where I got to monitor the injury report. If Michael Thomas is able to play, Jarvis Landry, that changes it a ton. Going back to the 2 pick sixes by Andy Dalton late in the first half, I don't really think either one of those were necessarily their fault. I mean, his fault, but maybe the one where he's trying to lead the dig and just didn't see Isaiah Simmons over the middle of the field. Sure, I could see that one. But nonetheless, I think he's still been stable. He's been solid. Take away those 2 pick sixes, and even if they're just picks, instead of them being guaranteed touchdowns because their interceptions returned for 6, plus they miss the extra point, they get the 2-point conversion. It becomes 14 points in total. You take away those, and that's a different game in my opinion. So I don't know. This Saints team can be interesting, but kind of like the way this Raiders team's trending, and they're running the ball really well, and the Saints have been kind of a little disappointing. I'll say it, against the run so far defensively this year. Now they still have the pieces there to be a pretty solid run defense unit, but hasn't been there yet this year. So this could be another one of those games where the Raiders rely on Josh Jacobs, rely on that run game, and then opens up the pass, which is, so 2005 of me to say. But, I think this could be a game plan where that kind of comes to fruition. And also, figuring out that left tackle spot is still something the Saints are trying to do, so it could be another big game for Max Crosby. That might be just enough to engineer some stops against the Saints offense, and I feel even better about that if, Michael Thomas is not playing, again, because he's just one of those guys who can get open quick. So if he's playing, I might change this and flip it back. But I'll take the Raiders on the road, but this is a true coin toss here. And normally in coin toss, I like to take the side getting points, but I just got to see the Saints injury situation, where they're at. Is Marshall Lattimore playing? Ton of different questions I need answered there. Pats Jets. I mean, the Jets getting a 1.5 at home. I mean, that's appealing. The downside of that play is, what is Bill Belichick going to do to Zach Wilson? Now, granted, that's exactly the same song I was singing against, Bill Belichick versus Justin Fields. So take this with a grain of salt. I could be completely wrong again. But, after getting a James Robinson, getting him into the offense, I think this is a team that can still live and have their identity through the run game. And then if they get a throw or two from Zach Wilson, it could be enough. But they're also getting points here. I think this is a 250-50 game, so I'll kind of lean on my rule versus the exception I made just the game before this. And plus, New England, what are they doing with this quarterback situation? I think Mac Jones, realistically, is probably the guy. I even tweeted, I don't tweet all that often, but I even tweeted after the second Bailey Zappi touchdown drive. I was like, is he him? Like, is this about to happen? Is he about to just take this job for his own? And then after that second touchdown drive, it was quiet. So it makes sense for Mac Jones to step in this role, but, Bill Belichick's being vague with why he benched him. So that's, kind of frustrating from perspective, like trying to understand why that decision was made. But, if this is Mac Jones versus Zach Wilson, QB edge is with New England, I'm sorry. But he's still got to play better than what we saw last week. And, even when we saw him earlier this year, wasn't all the same. And even second half of last year wasn't the Mac Jones that we saw through the first 8 games. So he's still looking to get back to his high water mark, which is a little concerning because of that uncertainty with the quarterback position. And, the Jets defense is legit, man. And, Sauce Gardner is a stud right now. That dude is already making a conversation to be a top 10 corner in the league. Now, plenty of time. We'll see how the back half of the schedule treats him. If he plays this good throughout the rest of the year, though, I think that conversation has to be had. And I mean, if he takes away Devontae Parker, then it's like, again, who's winning on the outside? So I'll go with the Jets and take them at home. So go Jets. They're kind of a team trending in a nice direction, but I think it's gonna be a fun game, and we're gonna learn a little bit more about the AFC East there in that matchup. Eagles Steelers. I won't drone on about this one because I could talk about the Steelers all day, but I'll take the Eagles, man. I mean, I guess if you're a Steelers fan, they're likely not to drop 4 interceptions next week. That's good. They're also likely not to have 4 passes hit their hands. Jalen Hurts has been playing like an MVP caliber, MVP candidate this year. And, that run game has been awesome. The Steelers have been, over the last couple of weeks, a little bit weaker against the run versus where they started the season. And, who is stopping A.J. Brown? Even last week where the Steelers had their entire secondary healthy, I don't care. A.J. Brown is a mismatch. And I'd say Devontae Smith against whoever our number 2 is a mismatch. So I just think that offense is going to roll. And I look at a Pittsburgh offense that even when they move the ball, get inside the red zone and things kind of falter a little bit. Also, Kenny Pickett is a rookie quarterback. He struggled with turnovers. That could end a drive in the snap of a finger. So there's a lot of different ways where I could see the Steelers just don't keep up. And then, let's talk about the elephant in the room. That Steelers offensive line is bad. And that Eagles pass rush, even if it's not, what it was when they won the Super Bowl, is the strength of that team. And then on the other side, it's Pittsburgh down TJ Watt. Still have some pieces who can get to the quarterback against one of the best offensive lines in the league. So, yeah, I just think Eagles control the trenches, and I think that leads to an ugly game here. And Philadelphia rolls at home. Titans and Texans. I'm kind of surprised this is only a 2-point spread. I'm actually not entirely sure why in general. But, the Texans, give them credit. That score last week against the Raiders was not the true indicator of where that game should have been played. But, Tennessee got the job done at home, taking care of business against the Colts. And that's a huge AFC South sweep that they have. And that, it's still early, but in a lot of ways that kind of locks up the division in my eyes. But I'll take the Titans at home. And here's my other lock of the week. Titans -1 first quarter. Todd Downing has been an absolute wizard with his, opening scripts, and he's been uber efficient getting points on the board. And then on the other side is Davis Mills. Do I need to say any more? And also Brandon Cooks. Look at him as someone who might be dealt. That obviously could take a huge hit against this offense. Maybe they wait till after this game. But that being said, super efficient early offense versus a team that's just not all that good. So I'll take the, and only a -1 differential. So I'll probably play that, probably play first half, and then I'll probably play this -2 number in general, because again, I don't know why it's that low against a Houston team that's just generally not that good. So that's kind of where I stay on this one. Pretty big on the Titans. But that being said, the fact it's only 2 kind of makes me feel like I'm falling into a trap here with Houston. So if you think this is a trap game, let me know down below in the comment section. Colts and Commanders, what should have been another Carson Wentz revenge game. I'm going to go with, a battle between 2 of the spunkiest quarterbacks. Can we talk about that? Taylor Heinicke and Sam Ehlinger going toe-to-toe. This is the spunk bowl right here. I'll go with Ehlinger, say he's fresh, and part of that is because I just don't know what I'm getting into. Taylor Heinicke's not good, man. Taylor Heinicke's just not good. Like, the one positive I could say last week was, like, when the game was on the line, he was chucking it to Terry McLaurin. And, Carson Wentz is trying to share the sugar. He's trying to find Jahan Dotson. He's trying to get Curtis Samuel involved. Dude, Taylor Heinicke, when he gets worried or when he needs to make a play, he's looking straight to 17. He's like T-Max, my dude. And I love that as somebody who's a huge Terry McLaurin fan. So I'm all about that. That being said, I just don't know what Sam Ehlinger is, so there might be a potential QB edge there. Also, you just look at where these two teams' defenses are. I give a ton of credit to the Commanders' defense, but last week, again, using the term outlier, that has been the only really solid game we've seen from the Commanders' defense, maybe since week 1 against the Jags, but Green Bay, obviously, by far and away, their most impressive showing, but that comes against an offense with no wide receivers right now. So how impressive really is it? Versus, I think the Colts defense, and, the talent that they have on that side of the ball is still there. This is another team that is going to be an interesting seller. What are you doing with Kenny Moore? Some other pieces there to still be figured out, but I'll take the Colts at home. And again, part of that is just because I don't know what Sam Ehlinger is versus I know Taylor Heinicke ain't good. So I'll take Indianapolis, and especially north of that field goal mark. If it gets to 3.5, I'll probably switch my tune here and go to the Commanders. That 3-point mark, obviously huge when it comes to betting. So 2.5, I'll take Indianapolis. 3.5, I'd probably switch to the Commanders just because I don't have faith in either one of these quarterbacks, to be honest with you. Rams and 49ers is actually one of my favorite plays. I'll take the 49ers. I just can't see with the state of the Rams offensive line how that offense gets off the ground. Again, using that plain metaphor, I just think that San Francisco pass rush is going to be enough to just like totally limit that Rams offense. As good as Stafford can be and as great as Cooper Kupp is, doesn't matter if Nick Bosa's in the backfield in 2 seconds. So I'm kind of going old school mindset here, battle of the trenches. I'm going to go with the 49ers here. The other side of the ball will be interesting. San Francisco actually held their own against Aaron Donald, despite that being, and I took the Rams in the first meeting. That was kind of a telling note for me. And I kind of just spoke to like how much help I think that Rams pass rush and that defensive line in general needs. Because like 49ers do not have a great interior offensive line group, but they just put all their attention on Aaron Donald and they slowed him down enough after that first play because Donald wrecked havoc on that first play. But after that, wasn't much from him. And then it's like, okay, well, that means Leonard Floyd needs to be winning one-on-ones. That means someone else has to step up, and no one could. So, again, this is why I love the Robert Quinn fit for the Rams as a potential ad before the deadline. But, yeah, I'll just take San Francisco right now. And plus, I think that Shanahan run game is just a natural mismatch. I think that kind of came to fruition last time these two teams played. I thought maybe, the addition of Bobby Wagner in the middle of that Rams defense, guy who played in the NFC West with Seattle for so long, maybe he'll have that kind of, insider info. I don't know. Maybe he'll be the difference. Maybe he'll be that little bit of an edge they need. And yeah, they still got gashed. So yeah, I think the Rams, even though they're coming off a bye, they're just in a tough spot, specifically with their offensive line. That's my main crux here with taking the Rams. So I'll take the 49ers, say that pass rush wins in this game, and then enough big plays on the ground as well. And then, first full week of Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's the task. Like, even if Jalen Ramsey takes away Deebo Samuel, it's like, all right, is Bobby Wagner then going to take away George Kittle? Okay, let's say he is. Okay, well then, what's your answer for Christian McCaffrey? And now I have no other options. That I feel really confident saying out loud. So that's kind of the point of why you make that trade, despite you not being crazy about it, kind of grading it around a C. Anyways, let's get off that tangent. Let's start talking Seahawks and Giants. I'm going to go Seattle. I can't believe a team's laying 3 points, though, against the Giants, a team that only has one loss. So, from that perspective, I can totally see it. I'll go Seattle. I think let's also address one other thing, the cross-country travel. I think it's a little more drastic when it's West Coast coming East Coast, and the game feels earlier, versus East Coast going West Coast, where this game at 4:25 would normally be 7:25, normal New York time. So I don't think that plays a huge, factor in this one. If it was the other way around, maybe I'd lean Giants, especially if they were getting 3 points at that point. That'd be crazy. But I don't know. I'm buying into Seattle right now. I'm here for it. Geno Smith continues to play great. Kenneth Walker has been awesome the last two weeks or week and a half that we've gotten to see him kind of be the lead back. And, the Giants have been getting some timely stops. That feels like a trend that's eventually going to break. And, we'll see what, DK Metcalf can play. Luckily enough, don't need surgery, but this could be a game he misses. And if he does miss this, maybe that I change my mind here. But, Tyler Lockett's been great. That touchdown from Goodwin last week was awesome. Granted, J.C. Jackson ruptured, part of his body on that play, so no contest. But, Geno's just playing great. And I'll take him over Daniel Jones, who's turned into this kind of game manager, trying to be safe with the football. And Brian Daboll's trying to figure out how he can manufacture points. I think that's a tougher task against Seattle, who's been putting points on the board at will, right? So dropping 32 on the Saints, goes crazy last week against the Chargers. So I think it's a little different when the Giants are having to play games 21-17 versus 34-31. And I think that's more so the game that they would have to play to try to win this one. So I'll take Seattle at home, plus the 12th man. I think that's a place of legitimate home field advantage. Bills, Packers, sorry, I just can't take Green Bay. I know Aaron Rodgers has never been a 10-point, underdog. But he's not the problem. I mean, he's trying to throw dudes open. I mean, that ball he had to Amari Rodgers at the sideline nearly had Green Bay in the position to be able to make the comeback. It was fourth quarter, about 4 minutes ago. He dropped a dime to Rodgers, who just couldn't get to it. Laid out, couldn't reel it in. But if he catches that in stride, that game gets way more interesting. And as somebody who had lock of the week involving Packers money line, I was certainly rooting for it. But the Buffalo coming off a bye week, that offense is crazy. The defense too. Like again, I asked the question: How is Green Bay going to manufacture offense against one of the best defenses in the league right now? And I think the Bills are in a spot where, like, especially if you're not going to use Milano as the spile that much, he makes sense as a great coverage option against Aaron Jones. And if you take away Aaron Jones and he doesn't have that huge running back versus linebacker mismatch, I fail to see where the Packers have an edge on offense against the Bills defense. And then on the other side of the ball, Green Bay's defense has a ton of talent, but Josh Allen and that Bills offense, just like Kansas City last week against the San Francisco defense, that is really good. You run into an offense of a buzzsaw, or a buzzsaw of an offense, that is, there's not much you can do. Sorry. If you run into a team that is just rolling on all cylinders, get out of the way. You're not going to be able to do anything against it. So I think that's kind of how this plays out. And the Bills on Sunday Night Football, that place is going to be bumping. Bengals, Browns, I'll go with Cincinnati. I trust them to continue to trust Joe Burrow. And that Cleveland secondary, yeah, sure, their defense was a little better last week. And, feels like all the attention on Joe Woods. He's kind of he's certainly on a hot seat. It feels like he's been able to get a little bit more. At least last week, it looked like he was able to get a little bit more out of that side of the ball. But yeah, it's a different task when it's, a run heavy team with Lamar, and yeah, they have Rashad Bateman back, but they're still not trying to air it out versus Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. I think it's a different beast, and I think this is one where the secondary concerns and the defensive woes kind of come back to light on prime time, and this could be the game that cost Joe Woods his job if we're being honest with ourselves. So I could see the Bengals running away with this one pretty handedly because I also like their defense, and I think they've done. Granted, DJ Reader is a huge absence in this one against that great run game, but I could see where it's like Nick Chubb gets the Browns to the board early, but then that run game trying to play catch up against the Cincy passing attack, I think eventually you lose enough ground to where you have to start leaning on Jacoby Brissett, and then, Brissett's just not going to make that comeback. Like Brissett is a good, fine quarterback when playing from ahead, but he's just not a guy that's going to engineer a comeback. That's why he's, QB 33 through 36 instead of, QB 3 through 6, But that is going to do it for my Week 8 NFL picks against the spread. Let me hear yours down below in the comment section. I also gave you some locks of the week. Really like Miami minus 3.5. Also, big fan of those first quarter spreads for the Vikings as well as the Titans. So I encourage you to make those plays as well. Also, I kind of like Titans minus 2 against Houston in general. But let me hear your favorite plays down below in the comment section. Love to hear your thoughts. It's a conversation down below. So I respond to every comment. Let's talk about it down in the comment section.